All right. Um, Second time is a charm. I recorded this flipped classroom video earlier today, but apparently my mic wasn't set up for my AirPods. I don't know. So there was no sound. Now there's sound. All right. So for today, we're going to be looking at part of prose. Prose is the style of writing that an author employs to, to get across what they're trying to get across in a piece of fiction, usually narrative fiction, but also it can be songs, it can be poetry. It is, the pretty language that we use to tell stories. Um, and we're going to look at four different elements of prose today: simile and metaphor. That is our focus for today. So let's talk about what those are. So they are both ways to draw your attention to something specific and to paint a picture in your mind of the essential nature of that thing, either by comparing it directly with something else or by telling you that it embodies the essence of something that it is not. But you should think about it as if it were this. So, you've got the definitions here: a simile, a figure of speech, a comparison, comparing one thing to another, usually using the words like or as, right? So, he was as big as a mountain. He was like a giant mountain, right? Like those are simile forms. A metaphor is a figure of speech where these words or phrases are applied to the object, um, but it's not actually that thing. So this is normally used as a way to represent or be a symbol of something else, some abstract idea. Uh, and we'll talk more about how authors use that later on. But an example of this would be, he was a mountain, in the midst of, uh, all the other people on the field, right? Like if you're thinking about soccer, like the center back was a mountain of a man. Um, like that might be something you use as a metaphor. Some examples: Jenny Slate, Little Weirds. She's one of my favorite actresses and authors. She picked a flower off and smelled it. Then she gave it to me to smell, and I sniffed in its honey floral petal cone. It smelled like a fancy candy. All right, so she gives us clues as to what that scent was, but this idea that it smells like candy, right? So there's a sweetness to it. It smells like a fancy candy. So for all of us, our experience with fancy candy is going to be different. So you might picture in your mind like fancy licorice or fancy chocolates or fancy ribbon candy or something like that. Um, she lets us know it's honey and floral. All right, it smells of honey and flowers. But for her, it smells like what fancy candy smells like. They were blind newborn babies and must venture themselves through the darkness and see what they found. So this is describing a theater troupe preparing themselves for a play, and this is one of the things that they do to start like embodying the space of the stage. Right? They shut off the lights, they close their eyes, and they just kind of like feel their way around in the dark. So she's saying they were blind newborn babies. So they were ignorant like a newborn baby. They could barely see, both physically and maybe emotionally, psychologically. Um, she's not actually saying that they were babies, but that's the metaphor, right? They were so like these things that they were these things. And let's use this last one because it has both. The call of self-expression turned the village of the internet into a city, which expanded at a time-lapsed speed, social connections bristling like neurons in every direction. So the internet is not a village, right? It's not a number of structures that are all close together that house members of a culturally homogenous group. Um, and it's also not a city. But that metaphor means that we're going from a small, like farming community into a skyscraper technology community. So it's making it bigger, it's making it better, it's making it faster. Um, it's allowing for more people to live there. That metaphor paints a picture in our mind of both where we start and where we end up. And then connections bristling like neurons in every direction. Neurons are specifically that thing in our brain that connects, that where like information transfers from one part to the other. So neurons firing means that we're thinking, that information is transferring, from place to place. So it's an apt simile because it is specific to this idea of the internet being sort of like a brain, in that we're connecting with each other, and also it's moving very quickly and is capable of disseminating a large amount of information at once. And that's it. Simile and metaphor. So these things can be used and should be used if that is the style of writing you're going for. If it is tonally relevant, that's what you should use. Otherwise, if you overuse these things, your writing can feel sophomoric, right? It can feel rudimentary, because you should also have the vocabulary and the skill to describe things without comparing it to another thing, right? So uh, the overuse of these things exposes your lack of practice as a writer. But sometimes they are specifically relevant to both the story and the tone, so they should be used in that case. And we'll talk more about usage and when to use it and what it sounds like as we're writing and reading our work. All right, that's it. Have a great Tuesday, and I will see some of you soon.